Welcome, everyone, to Rising Out of the Chrysalis with Marisa Grace, where I share life stories of struggle and triumph, not only through my own life experiences, but also through the experiences of my guests, as a way to help you have breakthroughs and find hope in your own life. I am Marisa Grace, and today I wanted to share my story of loneliness with you. So since I was very young, and as long as I can remember, my parents would always leave me alone. Well, they obviously had to go to work to be able to provide for us and bring food. And even though they work really hard, we still struggle financially. We didn't have a lot of food. When we were young, we basically didn't have a lot of the basic needs that most of us have nowadays. And I was often left alone to fend for myself. I would have to go to preschool, believe it or not, since the age 4 or 5, all by myself. So I had to be responsible. I don't know how I remembered, but I knew my way there and I knew my way back. But what happened is because I was left alone, although I had all the freedom to go wherever, I was just, there to decide what to do. It wasn't like I was locked up in the room. I kind of got used to being alone because I didn't have my parents were never there. And then even later on, I went to live with my grandparents for quite a few years, the majority of my childhood, and experienced the same thing. So, after coming home from school, I was left alone where, my grandparents went to do their farming or whatever they had to do. And I would just stay home all by myself, just playing, just minding my own, dreaming, and just I wouldn't leave the home. I was never that child to go on adventures like my brother. He was very adventurous. Was never at home. So they kind of got used to me that if they left me somewhere, I would just stay there. And I got used to that. I got used to just being by myself. And I developed this comfort that was where I felt comfortable, was being alone, without people around. And that was my norm. So as I got older, my comfort zone was being alone. And still today, I kind of struggle with that a little bit, where I pull away whenever I'm struggling with something. I just want to be left alone because that's my familiar place. That's where I feel like, home, where my safety zone is, being by myself. And that's because I got used to that as a child. So that loneliness that I have experienced throughout my life really stems from me as a child being just left alone all the time and not getting used to being around people so much. And with that, I struggled a little bit socially because of that. I didn't really develop maybe the social skills earlier on that I needed. Although, I did go to preschool and school, but it was still kind of a loner. I did have my friends. There weren't too many because I always pulled away because I didn't feel comfortable being surrounded by so many people. My comfort zone was always, being by myself. That's what I was used to. And I do remember as a child, my grandmother encouraging me to just leave the house, get out of the house, go play with your friends, go find your friends, and just go hang out. Which, doesn't seem normal, right? Most kids are always anxious to run out of the house to go play with their friends, where I was more comfortable being at home. I would have to be pushed out to go and, socialize with my friends. And that's how I developed, that feeling of just being alone. But it was more of a comfort zone for me. Now, what I have found through working with so many clients is whenever they experience loneliness, we don't all, we may all experience loneliness at some point, but the reason behind it may be very different from one another. We might have experienced loneliness in different ways. And what I have found is it always stems from their childhood and their experiences earlier on. So some might have been left locked up. The parents had to go to work and didn't have a babysitter, so they would lock them in the house, and they had, nowhere to go. They felt like they were in jail, and they developed this sense of loneliness, like they don't belong. They feel like they don't belong in society, or they have connection issues later on where they want to fit in a certain group, and they struggle with that, and they feel very alone. And they even have connection issues with their spouses. And even though they may have a family, like I have a family, there are times where you feel very lonely. And the feeling, it's just a feeling, right? It's not really a physical experience. So as adults, when we start feeling alone, it doesn't mean that we're not surrounded by people. We could feel very lonely and be in the middle of a family of 8 or 10 and still feel like we're very alone. Or we can be at a group gathering with hundreds of people and be sitting there feeling very, very lonely. I have experienced that where, I might be at a party and just feel so lonely there, not feeling like don't feel like I'm connected to anyone. I don't feel that connection. And that's a feeling from within, something that we feel inside. It has nothing to do with the outside. So what I'm trying to say is that when somebody says they're lonely, it doesn't mean that physically they're alone. It's just how they feel inside. And oftentimes, lonely, I'll come in and, keep company with you. It doesn't mean that's going to fix the problem either. And when people feel alone, even when somebody else will try to keep company or try to make them feel better, it might make them feel a little better, but it's not going to fix the problem. They're still going to feel lonely even when there's company present. And, I've experienced this where I had reached out to a friend where I knew they were struggling and they felt very lonely. And I just sat there and they just kind of withdrew to themselves and kind of just pretended I wasn't even there and just went about their own thing. And, they withdraw, right, from the environment, from whatever it's around them. Now, you could also experience loneliness. I had clients also where in their childhood, they had to step up and become adults early on where, maybe they had a single parent and the parent, struggled to provide. Therefore, they were left alone to take care of the siblings, their brothers or sisters. And they felt alone in that journey. Like, I'm all alone. Where's my mom? Where's my dad? They're supposed to be here supporting me and helping me. I have to be the grown up now and take care of the household and the cleaning and the babysitting. And I feel so alone. And they develop this feeling later on in adulthood where, now they have a family, but yet they feel alone. And everything kind of stems back to the childhood, right? It always goes back to your experiences as a child. So if you experience loneliness, what I suggest is go back as far as you can, as far as you can remember, and see, was there a time as a child where you experienced this loneliness? And that's where probably when it started. And it's that child that's still, crying inside, wanting to be connected, wanting to be loved. And as long as that child is craving to be connected, you will always feel lonely. So, really, the cure for loneliness is to heal that inner child that feels very alone. And it can be easily done. So, for all of you out there that feel very lonely, know that you're not alone. You're never alone. There's so much around you. There's nature around you. You have neighbors. You might have neighbors downstairs, next door. If you step outside the door, you'll see people. You're never alone. You go to supermarket, it's full of people. You have family and friends you can call. So you're never alone. You have, your God, the universe, your guides there watching over you. You're always surrounded by someone or a guardian or an angel. There's always someone watching over you. So physically, spiritually, you're never alone. It's just the feeling inside that you really need to take care of. And for me, for a long time, that's what it was, until I was able to heal that little child that felt very alone, that felt abandoned. And not only that, I also felt alone spiritually. I felt like my God had abandoned me and left me all alone. So that was another part of me I had to heal. And we can experience this too, right? Where you feel like you prayed for something. Maybe you had, a struggle that you're going through, a hard time, and you spent so much time praying for a solution or a resolution, and you didn't get it. And you felt like, well, God or whoever you prayed to has abandoned me, and I feel so alone. I was the only one I could turn to, and I feel alone now. I feel like there is no God. I feel like there's nobody there watching over me. So you can develop that loneliness spiritually as well. And that's really not true. They are always there for you, but sometimes when we're so disconnected from ourselves and from who we truly are, we can't hear. We can't hear the signs. We cannot hear, God talking to us. We have to be connected. We have to be present. And when we're so emotionally destroyed, so emotionally distraught, we can't hear those messages. And this is why it's so important to heal our emotions, right? To heal these feelings so it doesn't plague our whole entire life. We don't have to go through our whole entire life feeling lonely or feeling depressed or disconnected. It doesn't take much to take a step in the right direction and trying to heal those parts of us. And we can all heal those parts. It is possible. So if you feel lonely, if you don't know what to do, or if you tried so many things and you still feel very lonely and you really don't know what direction to take, feel free to reach out for some support, and I'll be able to guide you and support you however I can. But for today, I really wanted to bring you this message about loneliness, that it is a feeling. It's not a physical reaction, meaning, it's not due to the fact that you are by yourself in a space. Now, Now, there's an interesting thing that also happens is that some people or have a fear of being left alone, which is a little bit different. It's not a feeling of loneliness. It's a fear of being left all alone. So they're always looking out, calling their friends. They have to be surrounded by many people. Whenever they do an activity, they have to have their friends around them because they can't do it alone. When they're home, they have to have somebody with them. They don't want to be home alone. So that is not really a feeling of loneliness. What it is, it's a fear, which is something different. So a fear is you're very scared to be alone because you're scared that if you are alone, something's going to happen. Something bad is going to happen to you, which, is a little different than feeling loneliness. Feeling loneliness is like a deep feeling that you're not connected to anybody and you don't have any support. Even though you might have it, you still feel like you don't. Now, having a fear to be alone is perhaps, due to many different things. Maybe you had an incident where you got scared, something really spooked you as a child, perhaps. Maybe, you were in your room, you were playing, and something jumped out and you got really scared, and you associated that with, because I was all by myself playing in my room, I got scared. So now as an adult, I don't want to be left alone. So I crave to have, I have this need that people have to be around me all the time because I have this belief that if I'm alone, something bad's going to happen to me and I'm going to get scared. And, that too, that fear is something you can overcome as well. And interesting enough, my dad is one of those people who has a fear of being alone. He doesn't like being alone in the house. We have a few dogs, and still with the dogs, he's surrounded by company. He does not like to be left alone for more than 2 hours or so. But if he was to spend a whole day by himself, he just can't help himself but to call his friends to come over and, spend time. And he gets very anxious and nervous. Again, it all goes back to where, there was an incident when he was by himself and he got scared. And now he has this fear and he feels safer when there's people around him. He feels like if people all around, that I'm okay and I'm safe. So he's always looking to have his friends over, needs to be surrounded by lots of people. And that's a common thing. And I'm sure you can associate with that as well. And that fear of, if I'm alone, something might happen to me. I don't want to be left alone is something, again, you can overcome. You just need to find out, where does that come from? When did you develop this fear? So we can reverse that. Like any fear that we develop, feel a fear of heights. I have a fear of heights. I haven't overcome that fear yet, but that was due to when I was younger and my brother used to, scared me to push me over the cliff. And ever since then, I created this fear around heights. So if I climb a ladder, I only go up like 3 steps. After that, I don't want to climb up anymore because I have a fear that I'm going to be falling from the ladder. And again, all of our fears stem from somewhere and usually comes from your childhood. There was an incident and then you create a belief around that incident, that circumstance, and that carries over into your adulthood. So really, all these things that we experience as adults all originated at some point. It was a belief that we've created as a child, due to a circumstance or something that happened. And we, as children, sometimes cannot process certain situations. We don't have the experience to process certain emotions, and therefore we come up with certain conclusions that drive into our adulthood. So here we are as adults experiencing these experiences, not knowing exactly where they come from. So I really hope that this has been helpful with my story. I'm sure you can associate with it. And I just wanted to let you know that just like me, I overcome my loneliness issue to the point, and this is where you want to be, to the point where when you're by yourself, you feel like you're surrounded by lots of people. And that's how I feel. I could be all alone and I feel like I'm surrounded by the whole world. I feel safe. I feel connected to everything. And whenever I'm at a party or a social function when there's lots of people, I feel safe and I feel connected as well. So that loneliness is no longer there. That feeling is no longer there. Like I have that feeling that I belong, I'm here and I belong. And this is where you want to be. That's, how you want to feel. And you can definitely accomplish that. So I hope this helps somebody. And if you are feeling lonely, please feel free to reach out for some support. So for today, this is really the message that I wanted to convey to all of you. And I want to say thank you for watching. Please share, like the page, and subscribe so you can get notified when I publish these videos. So until next week, I love you, and I see you then.